My name is Greg Higgins, Chair of the Natural Resources Commission, and I'm calling this public meeting to order at 7 p.m. May 13th, 2020. The Commission will review wetland filings under the Mass Wetland Protection Act and the Concord Wetlands Bylaw. Discussion at tonight's meeting will be limited to regulatory matters only. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order of March 12, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this meeting virtually. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the meeting, the public may access this call through video conferencing or telephone. Following the presentation of the petitioner and questions from the Commission, members of the public will have the opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment. After the Commission has reviewed the application and the petitioners, the chair will ask the public comment, and the host will unmute all mics. If you're calling in on a telephone to speak, you need to press #9. All video screens will be turned off with the exception of the Commission, Delia, and current petitioners. Once the Commission has acted on an application, the petitioner, of course, is free to leave the meeting. We are recording this meeting. I can say that I think Zoom records it as well, and I ask that anybody out there that has the intentions of recording it, please let the chair know. Screen sharing will not be permitted unless absolutely necessary. Delia will put up petitioners' submitted work. We need to have names on all the M. Brady, I guess is good enough. At this time, I would ask the commissioners to introduce themselves. We will roll call all votes. Once again, I said my name was Greg Higgins. Lynn? Yeah, unmute, please.
Delia?
You're good.
You're okay now. Just state your name, Lynn, so we get it in the record.
Oh, again, oh, sorry, Lynn Huggins.
Ed?
Ed Nardi.
I don't see Nick. Judy? There's Nick. Judy?
Judy Zombrecker.
Okay, Nick, go ahead.
Nick Pappas.
Thanks, Nick. Okay, without further ado, our first issue this evening is one that we started just for everybody's edification. If you're, I don't know if some of you weren't on, we got technical difficulties last meeting and we got cut short on this one. So I think the proper thing to do would be, if you don't mind, Dave, when I start talking, if you would just cover how we got here and we just start it over again. It doesn't take very long. What I would like on this one though is I want to sort of divide this a little bit in half, or not in half, but in sections, whereas we'll take care of the incursion, the violation in the river, the 200 feet. Let's take that up and discuss that and move along to the second part, which has to do with the making of the pond, because I think that has different ramifications. So
Greg, I'm recused.
Oh, thank you. Yes, and you're gonna, but you're gonna stay involved and watching as
if Delia wants to mute me, I'll just hang out.
And you're more than welcome to mute yourself. All right, this what we see up on the screen is the proposal in the top left corner. Take it away, Dave. Hello. Whoever wants to. Can you unmute him? If we.
Dave Crossman is unmuted.
Dave, are you there? You're not. Unmute yourself, right. Dave. There you go.
I just got to turn on the microphone.
We've enough technical difficulties in this one to sink a boat. Let's hope we get through this. All right, let's cover this issue as a separate issue, and then we'll talk about the pond. All right, go for it.
I'm Dave Crossman with B&C Associates, representing the Concord Country Club. This filing was in response to an enforcement order for violation of work within the 200-foot riverfront of Dugan Brook. We have a little under 600 square feet of work within the outer riparian zone and some 80 square feet, give or take, of land that was actually excavated for construction of an irrigation pond, which was just beyond the riverfront area. Our filing is for restoration of all the work within the riverfront, and we have proposed plantings, obviously restoring the, I think it was about 40 cubic feet of fill or excavated area. We're going to restore that area and replant the area where the vegetation was removed inside the riverfront area. I know Delia walked and confirmed the wetland line, Delia and Colleen. So the riverfront area has been surveyed and shown on the plan, and we provided a planting schematic with a fairly dense planting in the area, denser than it was previously prior to any cutting. So that's where we're at. That's what we're asking for approval of the restoration plan.
And this was predicated by, how did this mistake, just for the record, how was this error made? Or what caused this, or what wasn't done that would have stopped this from happening, if I can ask it that way?
At the beginning, the contractor pulled a tape through the woods to the 200-foot mark, which they then believed that was the area of the riverfront. They then started working on what they thought was the area outside the riverfront. Some neighbors contacted Delia about the work out here, and then Delia asked the country club to stop, and there was since subsequently an enforcement order was issued. The country club contacted me. I went out there and delineated the edge of wetland and the riverfront area, and I then had the country club hire Stamsky and McNary to survey all of my flags and to accurately show the 100-foot buffer zone in the riverfront area on the plan. At that time, we found out we were not completely outside the riverfront area as they had thought. And this plan was generated, or at least the restoration part was generated based on that information.
All right. Commissioners have any questions on this?
Yeah, I understand what the contractor did. My question is, you know, the country club knows that they're surrounded by resource areas and have certainly applied for applications before. Why did the country club not realize how close this was, and like many other applicants do in town, come and do the due diligence to ensure the work was not being done within a resource area?
I can't speak for the contractor, but I'm going to say that they felt they were outside of that area based on an inaccurate taping. There is some topography as it goes uphill.
I'm sorry, I was referring to the owner of the property, the country club.
As Dave was mentioning, when we reached out to the contractor and they measured it, they had we felt that we believed that we were outside the resource area and within our jurisdiction to do the work. It wasn't until after the fact that we found out we were inside the jurisdiction area. But prior to
Sorry, so Greg, I'm sorry to interrupt you. If you could just introduce yourself for the record.
I'm sorry. Greg Sincata, General Manager of Concord Country Club. What's that?
No, I thank Delia for that was my error not to ask you to do that. Thanks, Delia. I just think this will lead into a discussion I wanted to have on the pond part of it, but it does seem I think the restoration, I'll just speak for myself, I think the restoration that you've advocated in this small incursion is adequate to remedy that particular incursion into the thing. I'm just stating my opinion on that, but I do not understand clearly how you got to this on such a significant project that you're undertaking, that a tape was pulled through the woods. If you were off by, you know, you're off by this. You're that close. You went that close to the 200-foot tape pole. That's a little.
We actually thought we were further away than the close proximity that we were at. We actually thought we were another 20 or 30 feet away, outside of the jurisdiction. But
Yeah,
again, that was our mistake on that end.
Yeah, well, I think if I could just I understand that people make mistakes, and we all do. But you're, as Judy had said, you know, you're the country club that's been in town a long time. You're part of the community. Yeah, you know community rules and regulations. You have significant sensitive properties all the way around you. You deal with it all the time. It's a little shocking, and one could say that, you know, it's quite a slight and disrespectful to the town, its boards and commissions, that nobody was brought into this to just you know, ask an opinion and say, you know, what we plan on doing here is a pond over here, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Are there any? I think in terms of this staying on the point, I have no problem with going forward on this restoration, but it's a bit appalling. I'll be frank with you.
And it was not meant with any disrespect to the town of Concord at all. We did come down and we met with Delia about a year ago for another location that we looked at. We did talk about where it was. We talked about the proximity to a wetland area in that, and being within a 50-foot buffer of that location. We did look at that. That was our original location. And then when we found out that we were that close to it and the scope of work in order to remedy that, we decided to look into an alternative location. And this was the location that we looked at. And again, we thought we were further enough away that we would be outside of any jurisdiction or cause any issues with any abutters, neighbors, or the resource area. And again, that was our mistake for not getting more of that factually confirmed.
Yeah, I guess you know, and I'll take that as gospel if you want me to, and I mean that sincerely. I don't think you went and did anything underhanded, but I just think that it's a bit amazing that you would think you were going to take down 4+ acres of standing tall trees, and that wouldn't be something that would be of interest to just run it by. I would suggest in the future that rather than just assume you run a tape through the woods, and if you're 2 feet or 20 feet beyond a resource area's limitations, that it wouldn't be prudent to notify the town. You know, I'm not giving you a lecture. I'm just
that's
letting
duly
you know.
noted, and I can assure you, while I'm here, that won't happen again.
Yeah. All right. I got off the track, which was fine, onto the second part. But in terms of this issue of the justice finite area of restoration, does any of the other commissioners have any further questions about it or comments?
Yeah, Greg?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I just want to,
Recognize you. Please state your name.
Nick Pappas here.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, I was going to bring up much the same points. I just found it very disappointing that an organization like the Country Club would treat a project of this magnitude in what to me appears to be a fairly cavalier manner. I would certainly not, in my case, trust a contractor to take a tape measure to tell me I was in good shape. That just, to me, that's appalling. That's all.
All right. Any other questions on the smaller issue of the reparation of the contract? Not seeing any. I guess we could ask for public comments at this point, or I guess we'll go to the second part and then make it all one. So if you wouldn't mind now bringing to for the real project here, which is the pond. I don't know whether, Dave, if you're going to be the presenter here as to what's going on there and give background so everyone is up to speed. Please.
The project itself was the construction of an irrigation pond for the fairways. There's the main pond, as you see in the middle, is where the water would be held. There's an overflow to the west and a small basin there to catch that overflow if that should ever happen. Just to the north, I want to say the northwest area, there's a pump house just east of the restoration area and north, yeah, right in there. The pump chamber, pump house, I should say, for the pumping the water out to the air through the irrigation pipes is in that area. There's a tremendous amount of cut in this area. I don't know how many came out for that site walk earlier this year, but there's a large amount of earthwork that's going to be performed in this area. I want to say it's 4 acres, and it's a fairly deep pond. It's going to be lined. How much water is going to be held, I'm not exactly sure. I'm not familiar with the engineering myself. But that's the gist of the project, is to create an irrigation pond for irrigating the fairways.
Dave, can I ask you, and maybe it's a question for Greg, was this plan done before the trees went down? I mean, is this a plan that was a plan prior to start? Or was this a plan that has been put together since the violation?
This was a plan that was put together before the start, but it was modified and changed based on the violation and the stop order for working. So because zoning in a few other areas, zoning and the watershed and they had to be done. So that's why the wall that's down there was added. There were some things that were added after because of the ZBA, which we're having that hearing tomorrow evening.
I guess so. The follow-up question is, so you had this extensive plan done, but nobody decided to flagging is not like an expensive thing. Flag and just make sure. I mean, it's just an interesting. Once again, I shake my head and don't understand. How much? What did you research other areas around, and can you quantify? What is the impact, in your opinion, of the water table and the brook and all that? Have you done studies on that you've presented to? I mean, we've seen nothing but this plan, so I don't. We're an advisory position on this in terms of the Board of Appeals, but it's next to impossible to know the answer of whether this is a good way to go, because we've seen no alternatives analysis or anything else. Anybody
Yes,
want to speak
we
to that?
have done that, and we did do test bits, and we did do that. It's above the water table that's out there. The one thing about, and there were some other comments that were from zoning as well, and we'll talk about those tomorrow night as well. But the irrigation system at the club has been there for over 50 years, and
Yep.
we've been pumping directly out of the ground, out of the wells,
Yep.
to the irrigation system for operations, and it's gone through, pumped through the pump house and into the wells and out into the golf course. What we're doing here is still pumping the same amount of water, if not less, into a holding pond, and then from there pumping out onto the golf course. So all we're really trying to do is take the same amount of water, if not less, because the new system should be more energy efficient, and the things that we're putting in today from what was built years ago. And then obviously you get rainfall that fills the pond and a few things that kind of help with some of that.
Did you do it in an analysis, and is it anywhere a document that says, okay, we pumped 200,000 gallons, I'm making this all up, by the way. I have no clue how much you pump, but 200,000 gallons a month, and we do it for 3 hours a day, and we plan on filling the pond with the same intervals and no more water during intervals. I mean, it would be what kind of limitations? In other words, if the pond got pumped down, got diminished, and you decided to pump 24 hours straight to fill it, that might have a much different impact than if you irrigate for 2 hours or 3. I don't know what you do, because there's nothing presented here. But in terms of, so do you get my point, or am I just rambling?
Yes, I do get it. And our superintendent is also on here, Peter Rapocchio. He's on here and he'll speak to this as well. But yes, we do monitor, as we have to, because you have to supply that information to the state on an annual basis of how much water. So Peter can talk about the exact, how much water is used per day, per hour, and how much, per month, the questions that you're asking, because we do have to keep those records, and we do have those records for the system.
But
Peter?
is it your intention to fill the pond with the same exact is an overstate, but relatively the same pace, or I guess I'll just leave it. That's a question. Do you get my point, though? You get my point?
Yes.
Like when you go to fill this pond, are you going to fill it at the same rate as if you were irrigating, so you don't draw down a town well nearby?
We would actually be filling it at a slower rate.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that information would be wonderful for us to be able to advise, because without that, I don't see how we could advise the Board of Appeals not to.
I can't see the picture on this right this second, but Peter, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I have bad light, my screen. Peter Rapocchio, Golf Course Superintendent, Concord Country Club. In answer to your question, yes, so currently we pump out of 2 wells, as Greg mentioned, into the current irrigation system. The wells are monitored by our Mass DEP state registration, which allows us to pump approximately 25 million gallons of water over a period of 214 days. We pump on average 120,000 gallons per day per year on average. So the way the system works is the new system, this holding pond, will basically take water from the wells and transfer it to the pond. So we're going to be taking the same drink of water, but over a longer period of time. So in essence, if we were to pump, let's say, 120,000 gallons in the irrigation system out of the wells, we would do it in 12 hours at night, or roughly 12 hours. Now will be that same amount of water will be coming out over a 24-hour period, because the demand will not need to be met from the wells, because there's a storage basin of a pond which will collect also rainwater. It will collect snow melt in the spring. We'll use the natural elements to fill it in the spring. And what's beneficial about this is if the pond is full and we hit a drought period, we actually can shut the wells off and just use the pond and pump the pond down a little bit in order to save the wells, because that's one of the issues that we run into now, where the wells are the only source of water for the golf course, for the tennis facilities, for the grounds and the landscapes. So all of our water usage would be monitored at the pump house, the new pump house, and then also the pumps and the wells at each pump house on number 7 and our 8th hole, where our current wells are. The reason we're doing this too is the wells, they get overtaxed from pumping, because the way the system is set up, the system is very old, very inefficient. An average irrigation system on a golf course should operate at 85% efficiency. Ours operates about 50. We've had it evaluated by independent engineer, irrigation consultant about 3 years ago, which led us to looking at options for storage capacity and also a new system. What's good about the new system is it's much more efficient, more heads on a closer spacing. The heads actually all have individual control, where the old system does not. So certain areas will be getting water exactly where they need. You're able to shut heads off from watering from 360 degrees, minimize it down to 180 degrees to kind of accurately dial your water in a little bit better. And we'll use a lot less electricity this way as well, because the new pumps are much more efficient. They'll run less. And the hope is that as we go through this, our wells will get much more longer longevity, longer life out of the wells, which will lead to not having to redevelop them as much as we have in the past, because they fill up with gravel. They're both gravel pack wells, and they're subject to the to sand and infiltration. The screens get clogged over time. So this will take less groundwater usage. We can't pump more than what we're allowed by the state, and we never have, and we haven't in the 10 years I've been there. So that amount of groundwater coming out of the ground is not going to change. And the hope is with the pond, we'll be able to catch snow melt and rainwater and be able to utilize that as well. The rainfall average throughout the summer will supplement several hundred thousands of gallons of water to help fill that pond over the course of the season.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a very thorough answer. My comment, and it's just a comment, is, you mentioned a study that got you going on this whole issue, and that's the sort of thing that would give you a background to be able to understand how this started, why it might be a good idea. But without any of that submission, it's very difficult. Any other commissioners have a thought? Judy, please.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question to what was described. I heard a description about pulling from the wells, which is useful. Was there any study done on the environmental impact on the surrounding wetlands? Because it's not only what's being pulled from the wells, but sounds like you're capturing water that potentially would be running off the ground into the wetlands, which could also have an impact. Was the study just on the wells, or was the study on the impact on the wetlands? Because those could be two different things.
My knowledge, the study we just looked at the wells. Their depth, both wells have been in since 1995, 1994. And they were put in through, they're close to, I believe they're both adjacent to resource areas. They were put in through, Mass DEP registration and permits. And we were looking at, redevelopment of wells, efficiency, energy efficiency, drawdown of the wells. We were, drawing down. We're trying to minimize drawdown as best we can. We have in each well right now, we do have current drawdown levels. That's how we monitor the well water. So in the summertime, as things start to dry up, we actually will lessen our demand. We'll ask less of the irrigation system, and we are able to keep the groundwater level a little bit lower. So it actually helps, able to, mitigate that a little bit better, so we can maintain our pressure and still get water out to where we need to. But we do lessen the water in the summertime. And we're also a golf course. I mean, our members like, firm and fast conditions. So we try to only water when we absolutely necessary. We don't water to the sake of watering. We water, absolutely when we need to. We have rain gauges on the golf course that when it rains, it shuts the irrigation system off. We have, wireless controllers. We have wind sensors. We have ET, evapotranspiration. So we utilize all the tools we need to try to maximize our water efficiency as best we can.
So basically, I understand that there wasn't a study done on the impact of capturing the surface water that would be potentially going to the wetlands in the studies that you've done.
Surface water into the pond or into the wells?
Well, you're collecting surface water into the pond, which I think, given the nearness to the wetlands, could potentially be flowing into the wetlands, which now, during snow melt and rainfall events, would be going to the pond instead. So what I heard described sounds like a very thorough study on the wells, but not on the impact of surface water potentially going into the wetlands.
Well, the other thing too to look at is it's just that small, well, that retention pond itself. The rest of the golf course does flow into all the Jenny Dugan Brook in multiple locations throughout the rest of the golf course, with all the slopes and contours, and there's drainage that's put in, and all the drainage runs into the creeks and the waterbeds, which then carry through. So there's, we did not do one for this area, but the other excessive amount of acreage throughout the property that does flow in there as well. So we believe there's plenty of water that's flowing into the.
And that very well could be the case, but I'm just trying to understand whether this was studied for this location, for this pond, and it sounds like it was not.
It was not, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I want to, Greg?
Please, Nick, go ahead, please.
Yeah, on the same issue. I mean, it seems the pond itself is about 4 acres. Did I understand that correctly?
The site itself is a pond is about 1.25 acres in total.
1.25 acres, okay.
Line part of the pond is about 1.25 acres.
So just to make Judy's point a different way, we get about 40 inches a year, 40 inches per year of rain around here. So 1.25 acres, you're talking about 3.5 acre feet of water that's going to fall onto the pond, right? Between snow and pond each year. That's a fair amount of water. And that water is water that's not going to go directly into the wetlands through the groundwater, however it flows today. It's going to be a significant difference. And just to reinforce the point Judy made again, it's disappointing to not see any analysis done on what impact that's going to have on the wetlands.
Anyone else have a comment from the commission? I will open it up then to the public.
Sorry,
Is
Greg,
anyone-
can I just make two clarifying points?
Please do.
So Dave mentioned that I had issued, or the commission had issued, an enforcement order for the project, which was not issued. I issued a violation letter requesting that they file, which they have done. So I just wanted to clarify that at this point, no enforcement order has been issued. And
Right.
the second point that I wanted to make was that when Greg, when you mentioned that we met last year to review an irrigation pond, the result of that meeting was that you would need to file if anything was within jurisdiction of the commission. So I just wanted that to be on the
And
record.
that correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thanks, Delia, for that clarification. Now, back to to public comments. I might say that we are in possession of a letter from a neighbor and a butter. Well, yeah, so I guess they're a butter, yeah. And they have some significant concerns about the work that's out there, and I would suggest that that the country club consider their conditions and work that through. We also have a letter of that letter that I just mentioned, by the way, May 12th. We have that. We also have a letter from an attorney which was hired by the neighbor dated May 9th. So that's what we have on record as far as people writing in. And neither letter was favorable to what the plan is out here. Going back to the public, who needs, I see.
Yeah, hi. Could I comment?
Yeah, please. Oh, absolutely.
99 Williams Road. And I had a follow-up question actually regarding the impact on the watershed. I noticed, and I think Peter mentioned, that the country club took a number of steps years ago to gain Audubon International certification, which is a voluntary certification program. But my understanding is that they are very helpful in terms of site assessment and identifying areas of conservation and areas of concern. And also when it comes to planning for a project such as this, water conservation is one of their priorities. And so I was wondering if they were consulted, given that the country club obtained recent certification, and this seems like a perfect entity to discuss a project of this potential impact.
Can I answer that?
Please do. Just identify yourself, Peter. Just.
Peter Rapocchio.
Thanks.
Yeah. So yes, to your question, Audubon International actually was out in July, and they did our recertification site visit, which I actually had sent off to NRC at some point in December. And all of our work was that we've been doing on the golf course was fine. It was all approved, and we were recertified. And the project that we are currently talking about, we did discuss with them as a possible future project. Part of the being Audubon certified is doing case studies over time, and this was one that we talked about on putting a new irrigation system in, utilizing storage pond, lessening the impact of wells and groundwater. So we did discuss the project with them conceptually. So in terms of the exact design and everything else, we didn't get into specifics with them, but it was discussed with them conceptually, yes. And we have spoken to them recently about the work we were doing.
Any other questions from the public? All right, seeing no other questions, it does seem that we're sort of asked two things. You have a violation notice of which you filed reparation of the area in which that you had done that, and I think do we have a motion that could be order of condition?
Yes, I make a motion that we issue an order of conditions for DEP file 137-1517 for Concord Country Club, 246 Old Road to 9 Acre Corner. And this is order of conditions with findings A and B, standard conditions 1 through 19, and special conditions 20 through 53, including restoration that is to be completed by June 1st, 2020, and prior existing filings to be closed out within 6 months of issuance of this order.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. Nick
Nick
Pappas.
seconds. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. I'll poll now. Nick,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. Thank you, Judy, on that. Now, as far as recommendation to the Board of Appeals, I think we've discussed this enough and I think we've made it clear that it's problematic in our, well, do I have a motion?
I make a motion that we recommend to the ZBA, that we recommend the ZBA direct the applicant to evaluate additional locations and irrigation system designs, including the current design, to determine if a less environmentally degrading approach exists for sustainable irrigation at the golf course, and that this evaluation include not only usage from the wells, but what happens with groundwater flowing into the resource areas. Following this evaluation, we recommend that the ZBA engage a third-party reviewer to evaluate the proposed system and potential impacts on nearby public water supplies, wetlands, and streams during, including under scenarios of adverse weather conditions such as summer droughts.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Was that Nick?
No, it was Ed.
Ed, thank you, Ed. Any further discussion? All those in favor, I'll poll once again. Ed,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
and I am an aye as well. All right. That brings us to the next item, and it is DEP file number 1371520. It's the Country Club again at 246 Old Road to 9 Acre Corner. And is Dave speaking? Who's speaking on that?
I will speak to that.
Thank you. Just once again, it's Dave. Go ahead. Once again, say your name for the record. That's all.
This is Dave Crossman from B&C
Thanks, Dave.
Associates representing the Country Club.
Thank you.
This filing is in response to an enforcement order, which came about when Delia and Colleen were reviewing the wetland and riverfront delineation for the previous project. That flagging came up to an area just to the bottom right corner of this area, and at which time they observed an area where there was stockpiles of debris up in this area, and they issued an enforcement order was issued to restore this particular area.
And just to clarify, that was a violation letter.
That was Delia.
All right. So we're put together a restoration planting area for the 25-foot and 50-foot zones.
Yep.
The area itself has been an open area for many years. I included a picture from 1994 aerial of this area. Was not treed or not woodland at that time. And in fact, Peter probably knows more about this, but there was at one time an old cart path that went out across the wetlands to the other side back before the beaver came and flooded this entire area. So the area that's actually between the two debris piles C and A was an old cart path that went across the resource area. So, and this area was open at, I don't know how much longer before that, but the area hasn't been, as far as I know, is not the current area where the debris pile or current lawn clippings and stuff are stored. But there has been stuff put here for quite some time, over many years. This telephone pole.
If I could just interrupt, Dave, on that point, the fact that it's open is fine, but do you have photographs or something to show that the debris? I mean, I can understand that it wasn't vegetated with trees and whatever, maybe for 50 or 100 years or whatever, but I mean, that doesn't mean that debris was stored there, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. But the point is, your proposal is to remove the debris out of, I assume.
Right. We're going to remove the debris. We're going to vegetate from the 50-foot down to the existing tree line at the end of pile C and at the end of pile A, and use that as kind of a visual barrier between the resource area and the remaining area, which we're looking to leave open as a grass. We're proposing some native conservation grass mix, which is on the plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In a discussion with Delia last week, I want to say, there was some discussion about the remaining 50-foot area between the two debris piles. So we have proposed some additional plantings to put a visual barrier along the entire 50-foot area between the resource area and what would become an open, I guess, meadow at some point.
Do you think, Dave, you'd be amenable to putting maybe some pheno markers out there?
I don't see any problem with that.
I don't either. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Are you done, Dave?
Yes.
Commissioner questions? Anything? Any thoughts, commissioners?
Quick question.
I would like to see the markers, Dave, just so that
Yeah.
we don't have this again.
Yeah. Do we need to have a waiver to do work in the 25-foot no disturb zone?
Interesting.
I think we typically, I mean, it's the right thing to do, but I think in the past we have requested those even for plantings in the 25-foot zone. I could be wrong, but that's what I recall.
Mm-hmm. You're correct.
I can clearly see a waiver applying here.
Yeah.
It's our wish to have this done by June 1st.
Okay.
I'm not, Judy, you're totally right. I just didn't think of it.
Well, we do, I mean, because the revised plans don't have the pheno stakes on yet, right?
Correct.
Could we make that a condition on the issuing the order of conditions?
That proper, well, make what a condition? The pheno markers? I think so.
So contingent,
On
so
the,
issuing the permit contingent upon receipt of the pheno markers as well as a 25-foot no disturb zone waiver request for restoration.
Yeah.
yeah. And will the work in the 25-foot zone be done by hand? Or what are the plans in terms of how to do this work?
It would probably be a small backhoe to pull that stuff out there. It's been there for quite some time. It's packed down, and there are some, there may be some stumps underneath some of that stuff in there. I know that there are telephone poles from a project in 2004, I want to say, down there. So there is some heavier things, and we're not sure exactly what may also be buried underneath the lawn clippings and everything. this brush pile. It's brush and lawn clippings for the most part, but I'm sure there are
Well,
many
Dave-
years ago other
Could be
things.
other stuff, yeah.
Yeah, well, Dave, just to ask this question, we don't want to do harm while we're trying to do a good deed.
Mhm.
Right.
So is there any, at some point, if you have I don't know what people think, if you have some rotting stumps, you got to go in with a track hoe and disturb the whole bloody area, and you wonder whether you get, is there a judgment call, Delia, that we could make with you that if they run into some extensive stuff that isn't, that's buried, that we leave well enough alone? Is that a posture we could take?
Yeah, so the plan has erosion controls shown
Correct.
on it. We'll
Yeah.
do a pre-construction. I would envision that just surficial materials are removed. And
Yeah.
I know that there was, a statement made in the filing that this has been going on for many years. But what we saw when we were out there was that the material only appears to be a couple of years old. So I think it's easily scraped off with, it would require a small piece of equipment to remove it. But I think with the appropriate erosion controls and oversight, that it would be a benefit to the resource area. I don't see that it would further degrade it.
Okay. Dave, you had a comment? No? Your screen lit up, that's all. Does any other commissioners questions?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, sure, of course.
This is Greg Sincata from Concord Country Club.
Yeah.
Can I just get clarification? Did you say that both of these, the restoration of the pond area and this restoration, did you say needed to be completed by June 1st of this year? Did I hear that wrong?
No, you heard that right.
That's a little more than 2 weeks away. That's a little bit with everything going on and workers and COVID and everything else. Could we get a little bit longer than 2 weeks under the circumstances?
What do commissioners feel on that? Delia, what's your thought on that? What's your suggestion, Greg, in terms of, we've already voted on the other one, which is the
Well, no,
June 1.
like I said, I just heard that, and I looked at I wasn't sure if it was, you said June 1st, 2020. I just wanted to verify that.
Yeah, it's a violation, so we like to get those, cleared up ASAP before.
So
Go
from
ahead,
the
please,
standpoint of plantings, June 1st, so this hearing was supposed to be held last week. Obviously it wasn't, so you had a little bit more time, which you don't have now.
we'll get on it, but I just, I don't want to.
Plantings, the point about getting plantings in by June 1st is because by that point, if they're not in, they tend to not do as well. So,
Right.
I think that there's some leeway to say, June 15th or, June 7th. But it makes it that much more difficult. It is to your benefit to get those plantings in sooner rather than later, because if they don't go in early, then they get super stressed with the heat. So, the order you could amend, or you could have that order be written, Greg, so that it is June 7th, which is 3 weeks from now. How is that, Greg, from your standpoint of getting that?
We'll do, obviously we'll do the best we can, and hopefully we'll get it all done, and we'll work real hard to try to get that. Obviously we got to get a contractor and materials, and things like that. So we'll work on it starting tomorrow. Evidently, we'll work on it.
This can't be new that you were going to be asked to do this, because this has been discussed since March.
Yes, we did, but we didn't know that the restoration was that quick, that it needed to be done that quickly. We did know we had to take care of it, and we did know we had to mitigate and restore that, but we didn't realize it would be that quickly. That's all.
Fair point. All right.
If I could
Yeah, please, Dave.
issue an alternate plan, we could have the debris removed by June 7th or whatever day, it's 14th or whatever day you decide on. It is getting pretty close to summer when we're getting into the heat. We could do the plantings immediately after Labor Day when they would have a much better chance of survival, but we could have the cleanup done in time and the grass seeding done, at least in the outer 50 feet, in time, in a more expeditious time. But the biggest problem I see is getting the plantings that will survive. It looks like we're going to go from early spring, which it seems like now with temperatures and everything, probably into
Yes.
immediate heat.
We're going to go 50 to 90 in
Yeah.
a nanosecond.
And that's not going to be good for the vegetation. Plus, we're not providing water, and we don't have an irrigation system in there itself. So if we go into an extended period of drought, I'm sure we could get some water down there, but it'll put a much stress on the plants, and there's going to be a lot of plantings and a lot of expense put into those plantings. So if we could perhaps wait until after Labor Day, when in theory temperatures and rainfall return to normal right after Labor Day, we could have that, but we could absolutely have the area cleaned up, at least remove the stuff that we're talking about, and we'll take a look and see what kind of heavy stuff is in there, but at least get the area cleaned up.
I can certainly live with that. I would prefer you don't spend money on plants and have them die, and this is just nonsense. We are moving on because we had all these problems and technical difficulties last week, delayed it, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we could do something along Dave's lines. Thank you. Let's go open it up though for the public here. Please.
Barrett Comgene, 99 Williams Road.
Please.
So I understand as it applies to this, if the request is to defer, and obviously that's your judgment call. I'm not going to intercede in that, but how does this apply to the previous plan for all the restoration of the removed soil that's been carted out of town that needs to be returned? And somehow, I don't know how they're going to do that, but I'm also just wondering, given that there are these violations, and I appreciate all the effort the commission and staff has done in terms of enforcing these, but what are the implications? I mean, obviously they got caught. Now they're asked to restore, and you're very amenable to working with them, but I can say that this area where they've been dumping brush, I actually see very clearly from my kitchen window. And I noticed there's piles of brush out there in recent years. It's accumulating. And, you know, obviously, I've dealt with the country club in the past. We've lived here for over 15 years, and we've been good neighbors, and we felt they were good neighbors and informed us of anything that they were doing, even if it wasn't legally required, in terms of just being a good neighbor. But I'm just wondering, I understand that these aren't enforcement orders, and that there's letters and there's an intent to work together with the country club to get the best end result. But clearly, as was mentioned, they knew that they were going to have to be doing plantings and shrubs in this specific area where they cleared all this. That doesn't seem that difficult. The bigger issue of replacing all the soil and some large trees in that area seems to be of greater concern. And what happens if the June 1st, or even if it's June 15th, if they don't plant for the one that was just approved in that notice of intent that on the previous filing?
Well, if there's an order of conditions and they don't comply with it, then they're in violation, and further steps would need to be taken.
Okay.
To answer you just directly. And,
Okay.
and this is a after the fact, we find debris on another part of the course, and this is a completely separate issue from anything to do with the pond in that sense, other than it's the same owner.
And in the same deadline, right, for the work to be completed.
Well, we tried, but I think we do this on as you might expect, on a regular basis. And this was all set up through the winter and with delays and what have you. We've gotten to the point where June 1, as David, who's an expert in this, is trying to tell us, as is Delia, it could be problematic for the survival of the plants.
I trust your judgment. Believe me, I've done spring planting.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
You don't.
So we want success here. We want success here. We want it marked so we don't have another debris pile issue in 3 to 5 years. And they've agreed to mark it. I think from this staying solely on this point,
Sure.
I think we've got what we, just my opinion, we've got what we needed and what we set out
Sure, I
to
just
ask for.
appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
No, a great question. No, I've got no beef with it.
So just to clarify, just so I understand this, so for the irrigation pond restoration, for that 540 square feet, there's no stockpiles that need to be removed in that area, or maybe additional work associated with the pond. But it's the intention of the commission that that restoration work occur by June 1,
Yes.
within the next 2 weeks, correct?
Yep, that's the vote.
Okay.
Greg?
Yes, please,
May,
Judy.
may I suggest that if on the debris pile restoration, what we want it done as soon as possible, if the conclusion is that the plantings won't occur until after Labor Day, as Dave suggested, we could wait until we get both the waiver for the 25-foot, work in the 25-foot no disturb zone, and also the updated special conditions with the pheno stakes in there, and then perhaps close this at our next meeting. Just throwing that out as a suggestion.
Yeah, I see your point, but what I don't want to have is somebody to feel that a decision is made and we got to wait for the decision to go forward. I mean, if we're going to go forward with it, I think we can. I get your point.
Okay, I just wanted to throw it out as a thought.
Yeah. Ed or Nick have any thoughts on that?
No.
What about the issue of the 25-foot waiver?
Well, I think that's kind of one of Judy's main points here is that that if we're not going to get the work done and we're going to delay it a week, but when's our next meeting?
June 3rd.
I mean, think of it from that standpoint. If you're the
So I think that the permit can be issued with those contingencies. That would mean that the plan with the pheno stakes and the 25-foot no disturb zone waiver needs to be in tomorrow so that the permit can be issued on Friday.
is that doable, Dave?
Yes.
Are you satisfied, Judy? I mean, I get your point.
Yeah, I
Greg.
just wanted,
You're an
I knew
Ed's
that we
point, I
had
get it.
some, I knew that we were looking to get this issued because we originally were looking for the early June, the June 1st deadline.
Yeah, we're trying to put them in when it's most advantageous. for the
Right, yeah, that
plants.
gave us just a little bit more breathing room to tie those
Yeah,
loose ends up.
yeah,
So
yeah.
don't feel strongly about it. I just wanted to throw it out as a thought.
No, that's not a bad thought. All right, well, I see no other comments. I'm up for a motion.
So just to be clear, as a commission, we are agreeing to the plannings needing to be completed by mid-September, into September, like a little. make sure-
By October 1st, Dave?
Yes, because I don't want to go get too late into October because then you possibly a hard freeze or something like that. So
Okay.
October 1st, between Labor Day and October 1st, as soon as the weather, cools off, we'll get those in there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I move to issue an order of conditions for DEP file 137-1520 for Concord Country Club, 246 Old Road to 9 Acre Corner, pending receipt of revised plans showing pheno stakes to demarcate the 50-foot no-build zone, and also a 25-foot waiver for work in the 25-foot no-disturb zone, with findings, excuse me here, I need to pull that up. findings A, B, C, and D, standard conditions 1 through 19, and special conditions 20 through 48.
Do I have a second?
Second, Nick.
Thank you, Nick. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's roll call. Ed? How
Aye.
say you?
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
And I'm I as well. Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Peter. And Vern's gone, the neighbor. Thank you for all your input on that. Moving right along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Closing issues. 1599 Lowell Road, DEP file number 1371519.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you're our closing issue person.
Yeah,
for
I know. I'm
tonight's
sorry.
meeting.
My computer is not being cooperative right now. Okay, I make a motion to close an issue for 1599 Lowell Road, DEP file 137-1519.
With findings? You have that?
Oops, that's where I'm having, just a moment. It's where my computer has frozen. Good.
Ed or Nick, do you
Just
have
a
them?
moment here, Greg. I apologize.
No, that's okay. Take your time, for goodness sake.
My computer is giving me the wheel of death.
Ah,
Okay, with findings A, B, and C, standard conditions 1 through 19, and special conditions 20 through
51.
51.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second, Nick.
All those in favor? Nick?
Aye.
Ed?
aye.
Judy?
Aye.
And I am I as well, and therefore it's unanimous. Pushing along here, we have a closing issue at 185 Elsinore Street, DEP file number
Yeah, I'm all set. I got that one pulled up. make a
1371521.
Yes.
Go ahead, Jude.
Okay, I make a motion to close an issue, order conditions for 185 Elsinore Street, DEP file 137-1521, with findings A, B, C, and D, standard conditions 1 through 19, and special conditions 20 through
54.
55.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Nick. I'll do the roll call. Nick?
Aye.
I guess Lynn, you're back.
Yay.
Are you yay or nay on the closing issue?
Hi.
I didn't want to throw a tough one at you. Ed
Aye.
and Judy,
Aye.
and I'm I as well. It is unanimous and so stated. Certificate of compliance, we're 21 Riverdale, DEP 137-1047.
I make a motion for issue a certificate of compliance for DEP file 1371047. That's 21 Riverside Avenue.
Do I have a second?
That's Lynn.
Thank Judy second. Lynn second. Thank you. All those in favor? Lynn,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
and I am I as well. It is unanimous. Administrative approvals. 233 Prairie Street. It's a tree removal. What's that all about, Delia?
So the homeowner would like to remove 3 large mature hemlocks in the outer buffer zone that are quite tall. They're far from the house, but there is a concern that if they fell, they would cause some damage to the house. He is willing to replant natives in their place.
Not pretty standard fare. Anyone have any issues or questions about that? Anyone out there in the public have any issues or questions on this? Seeing none, I'll wait 10 seconds, 9 seconds. We need a motion on this. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve an administrative approval for 233 Prairie Street for tree removal.
All those, second, please.
Lynn,
Second.
I'll second, yeah.
Ed, second. All those in favor, Lynn,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and I'm aye as well. It's unanimous. 261 Park Lane, a patio replacement?
So the homeowner has 2 brick patios, one here partially within the 25-foot no disturb, and one here within the 25 to 50. They're brick patios. They have some flagstones that they would like to replace those by hand. So it seemed, it's an in-kind replacement, no increase in the footprint.
Anyone have any thoughts on that? Questions? Not hearing any. I'll ask for a motion.
I move we provide administrative approval to 261 Park Lane for patio replacement.
Do I
Second,
have a second?
Lynn.
Lynn, thanks, Lynn. Roll call. All those in favor, Nick,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
Lynn,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and I'm aye as well. That's unanimous. 109 Seymour, a tree issue.
The tree is overhanging the house. It's an oak in the outer buffer zone. Home is on White Pond, and it's a tricky one, but they have somebody that will come in and climb the tree to cut it and remove it from the site.
And leave the stump and,
Yep, the stump will be left. And actually, a lot of the tree will likely be left on the site, just because of the difficulty with the steep slope.
any further questions on this? I need a motion.
I move that we provide administrative approval to 109 Seymour Street for tree removal.
Do I have a second?
Aye, Lynn.
Thanks, Lynn. Polling, Lynn, how say ye?
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
And I am aye as well, so that is unanimous. That moves us on to 336 Lexington Road. This is something that we discussed at a couple of meetings. I'll just give a little background from my standpoint. And if you all remember, the final decision came up in our first Zoom meeting, which I think the meeting in general went over well, but at this point, I have to acknowledge that if you remember, it was anticipated that maybe we wouldn't have moved that evening, but Peter, the owner, felt that he wanted us to because he thought, now we didn't know we were going to have all this delay, but that he would like the decision. So as a result, we moved and put an order of conditions in. Probably our standard practice of discussing those a little more in detail was not, as a result, taken part. And Peter feels that there was some confusion as to what he anticipated that we were asking of him and what he saw when he got it in writing. So I think the proper thing at this point, so he would like us to reconsider and maybe make some adjustments to that. And I'll let Peter talk about, if you wouldn't mind, briefly, just what the hooks are that you would like us to, and thank you for joining us, Peter.
Sure.
Just so everyone understands why you're asking what you're asking, and we'll see what the commission has to say.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think if the commissioners remember this project, I know you have a lot going on, so I'll just refresh you. We're building a pool, but the pool itself is by right. All the landscape, or all the hardscape and everything is by right. It's outside the 50-foot zone. What we're asking of the commission is on that bottom left-hand corner, right inside where you see the dark line for the siltation barrier, we just have about 20 feet of fence that's going in the no buffer, or in the 50-foot zone, in the buffer zone. So when we reviewed these last week, I think Greg is right. I think due to everything going on in the COVID and being that it's your first Zoom meeting, I actually had no idea that you guys were reviewing the special conditions because we didn't have a copy of them and we didn't know what was being said in them. So I think you probably went ahead and reviewed them, or I don't even know what the vote was. I don't even remember voting and mentioning special conditions, but you probably did something like I've witnessed in the past ones where you referenced the number count here. And I'll be honest, I didn't know what you were referencing. So when I got them, some of them are a little bit of a surprise, although most of them I think look to be boilerplate, and I have no problem with. There's a couple specific to our project, some of which Delia already conceded to say, like the filter mitt was referenced that we'd had to get special approval. She admitted that and changed that to say, oh, we already have it in your plan, basically. But there was basically, in the end, after talking with Delia and Greg, there was two of them that I think are going to cause a lot more financial burden on this project to do when we're only doing a small incursion, with just the corner of the fence. Number one of those was the as-built plan that was going to be requiring the irrigation. So this came out of a conversation when I saw special condition number
20.
Well, 20 was part of it, but it actually came out of the sprinkler conversation too, which was number 43, saying that no underground sprinkler system shall be installed in the 100-foot buffer zone. When Delia, Greg, and I discussed this over email, it came back to say, okay, add these into the as-built plan. Well, we're not changing the sprinkler system. We're not doing anything with it. It's not in the 50-foot zone, but it is all around the house, all around the property. So I really had some concerns about, a special condition in there when we're doing work that really has nothing to do with that sprinkler system, limiting us, and then actually saying that we had to provide a full as-built plan for doing that. That was the first thing that I wanted to ask the commission to consider removing. And I'll be specific with the condition numbers in a few minutes. The second thing was about the mowing. This field has been maintained by us, by the previous mowers, or previous owners, thank you. Previous mowers too, right? But we've had a farmer down the road who said he's been mowing it for years, right? And the previous owner said the same thing. They were mowing twice a year. We mow once a year last year. Delia suggested once a year, and I'm all on board with her suggestion. But this whole area past where we're doing the mitigation is what we're referring to, way off, not even on this plan down here. That whole area is a field that we mow. And I just didn't think it was fair to kind of condition that part of the property when it has nothing to do with the project that we're talking about here at all. When it really has been mowed and been maintained and is in a constant state for decades, longer than we've even been here, and we intend to keep up doing what it is. But to put a special condition on there saying to mow once a year, I thought was overly limiting the project, especially when we were only dealing with a fence, 100 yards away from that part of the property. So I did want to ask, even though I appreciate Delia's suggestion on that, and we will be following it, who knows, maybe 5 years from now, somebody says, hey, the best thing to do is to mow it in the middle of the summer. Who knows? We don't know. We didn't want that special condition in there to go be attached to our deed to limit the mowing. So specifically, we're asking the commission to remove special condition 20 from this. The other ask was with special condition 21 about the seating. Yeah, thanks. That's the whole property. You see the stretch that I'm talking to goes all the way over to Cambridge Turnpike down there. So that's the condition we were asking one of the conditions we're asking to have removed.
20.
20,
which is the as-built at time of pool, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was 20. Where is it?
20 said immediately upon completion of the pool equipment and fencing, and prior to further construction activities, the application should engage in professional landscape. That is more of a protection for you, such that you don't finish all the work and find out that you, in error, are now 45 feet from the wetlands, which would be problematic on your part. But my sentiments, you already know, is if you want to roll those dice, roll the dice. I mean, I wouldn't.
Yeah, that's what we were looking for, is to just do a finished plot plan.
Right.
When we were done with the project overall.
Okay. What was the second?
Okay,
Second one.
so actually, if we have a few minutes, can we just breeze through them real quick? Because that will take care of them. Most of them I'm going to skip. I want to make sure I have the right order number, and I see you guys have a slightly different version than the one I'm looking at because I'm looking at the original one. So
Yep.
20 was the first one that I was asking to be removed. 21, I think Delia and I discussed this, and we just removed wetland scientist to be replaced with a qualified landscape professional to do the slice seeding, and I was good with that.
I just want to point out that in the filing that was submitted, that was part of your filing,
Okay.
that the wetlands professional would oversee the activities. And so
Yeah,
we
I
just
guess-
captured that in the conditions.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that, Delia. I wasn't aware of probably the specifics of the wording in that. And having a landscape professional is going to give us a lot more flexibility and not require us to hire a second person, you know what I mean, to oversee the project. So I was definitely all right with how you reworded that there. 22 was the one I was also asking to be removed. It's now labeled 21 on yours. And that was the time of year restrictions for mowing. I think then, basically 23, 24, all the way down. Yeah, if we scroll all the way down, I had no issues at all with any of these until we got to 27, which Delia has already modified in there because our plan did call for a filter mitt. So she just removed that, which is fine. And then if we keep scrolling down to the bottom. Okay, right here. So number 42, since we already had sprinkler systems in there, we are not modifying the sprinkler system other than to move a valve box, which would literally be under the shower end of the pool. So we can't have that there. But as far as the sprinkler heads in the lawn goes, nothing with that was going to change. But we will have to reroute it. So I did ask that 42 removed, and I think Julian and Greg agreed that that would be,
Well, I think the way I see that is twofold. Technically, I think any of those sprinkler heads that were within 100 are structures, and the plan presented did not show any. But I understand that's sort of like an oversight on the engineer picking up that. So I didn't. My sense was that I didn't want to hold you burdened with that.
Thank you.
And you, we also talked briefly about, where are the sprinkler heads, and your comment, which is somewhat understandable, is, first of all, let's make it clear, I don't think we ever knew you had a sprinkler system.
Mm-hmm.
So in all the discussions, I don't think that ever came up. And for you to have to go around and find all the sprinkler systems in the front yard and everything out of our jurisdiction, I don't think was the intent here. This was pretty much boilerplate. And had we known it, I think it would have been worded differently.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, no, I kind of figured that after we spoke. So yeah, that's why I was asking for 42 to be removed. And then if we keep going,
yeah.
I think that was close to the end. We only had a few more. We scroll down here. So this was the one I wanted to ask, for the final project, for the certificate of compliance, I didn't want to have to add in all the sprinkler structures again, because that would require a complete resurvey of the property from the road right back to the edge of the lawn, where well, not the meadow, but there's a line in there you can kind of see if you looked at Google Maps, where you can tell where the sprinklers stop, and we would have to have that all surveyed for probably about 30 or 40 heads that are throughout the whole property. So that would have been a pretty substantial financial expense to have to go through again at this point. And again, it's only for that small incursion of the fence, which really has nothing to do with the sprinkled area of the lawn. So that's why I was asking for 51 to either be removed or not to reference the sprinklers in there. And that was it.
Speaking of that, I believe you're going to have to do an as-built of the location of the pool.
Yeah, I was talking to Paul about that, and I think the as-built is a simple plot plan. So once we deal with the building commissioner on the as-built, the simple plot plan has the location of the pool structure, the location of the hardscape, and then the 50-foot buffer zone, the 100-foot, 50-foot, 25-foot, and then any other plot baselines on there. It
Well,
didn't
I think they have to shoot it though to do it. And my thought is, could they, because I don't think it would be onerous to do this, rather than locate is to shoot a line, a reference location of where the sprinkler heads are, saying existing sprinklers no closer than this, and just add that line as they do the as-built for the pool.
Do
That
you mean
probably
the furthest perimeter of the sprinklers, or do you mean a line?
yes, the furthest down towards the resource area, just as a reference point. I don't know what the rest of commissioners, but that might, instead of going along, try to find every single head, which could be considered onerous. What I think our interest would be is we have an existing irrigation system, ergo it exists.
Mhm.
We want to make sure in 10 years, when the Murphys have bought the house and we find that they're 50 feet further, we say, we have a plan that says they stopped here in the year 2020. That's a concern to me. And I don't think it's onerous to just have them shoot an approximate, that this is the approximate extent of current heads. Would that work for you? Delia?
Yeah, that would definitely be better than shooting or mapping out every single head, because I know there's a lot across the property. So
What say you, Delia, to that? Does that work for you?
So
I'm just
I
curious.
guess, I mean, usually we have all the features that are,
We didn't have them at the beginning, and that ship has sailed, so to speak.
correct. So I guess I would just go back to saying, leave in the standard condition, that boilerplate condition that, if you don't put in any sprinkler systems without approval from the commission. I mean, if you have an existing sprinkler system, then okay, but it's got to be captured on a plan somewhere if it wasn't done.
Well, that's my point.
beforehand.
If you capture the closest line to the resource area.
So
doesn't
everything
that-
within the 100 foot?
yeah. So Delia, if you remove that line from the last one, and for 43, if we just edited it to say no underground sprinkler systems shall be installed. However, like I said, we've got to move a valve box. It's under the pool, right? But if we put something there to say maintenance of existing sprinkler system, will be allowed or something like that, would that be?
With no expansion.
But it's hard to know what that means if
See,
you
the
don't
point is,
have it
the
on a
reason for an
plan.
as-built, Peter, is,
Yeah.
I think you know, is it sets the demarcation line so we can verify it at some point. That's the only reason we want you to do an as-built
Sure.
for the pool.
Yeah, so I'd be all right with shooting that line then, do you know what I mean, and doing it that way. Like
How
you-
do commissioners feel about all of this? Anybody have a comment or see how we got here? And
Greg, would that line that you're suggesting pick up all the sprinkler heads just kind of in a line going across the property, the furthest extent of the sprinkler heads? So you have a approximate location?
yeah, and I think it would be just an approximate line. We wouldn't know with going as-built if there's 6 of them across the yard. I'd be more interested in getting.
Right, I mean, it's not hard to as-built the sprinkler heads. Those are features that you can see very
I mean, if you
easily.
just grab the ones that set the line, it sets for a permanent record as to what is there, and we acknowledge that everything else. Just keep in mind, which Peter has not mentioned, to his credit, is that he's doing quite an extensive restoration down there, which would not have been required and to be as. I'm not speaking for you, but
Well, thanks, Greg.
it does weigh on me that you're willing to do a lot of work further into the resource area, and I do want that acknowledged at least.
Thanks.
I guess that the question that we always see with regards to irrigation systems in particular falls within the 50-foot zone.
Yep.
And having documentation of are there any sprinkler heads within the 50-foot existing now would be beneficial to future, potentially, future commissions if someone comes in and wants to do something to the irrigation system, because that would be the first thing we would want to know.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah. And things like that happen, Peter. We find that people don't know, and they,
Yeah, thanks.
this way we say, no, it's
Right.
part of a document that, you know. at the
Yeah,
time.
I mean, I'd be happy to shoot the outer boundaries of the sprinkler system
All
as,
right.
as it
Does
looks.
that work for everybody?
Yes.
So we're going to go with a landscaper instead of, we're going to take,
President is profoundly incapable of
Whoops, sorry.
I don't know who's talking. Who was that? Who was that masked man?
That was me. Something on my computer. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, you're watching a video. I get it. Any further questions? Anybody out in the audience, please, in the wild Ethernet, have comments or questions? Okay, how are we going to get our head around getting this accurately? Let's see how we can define this. We're waiving the original 20 and bringing everything forward. Where Delia's comments are, I guess the idea is, do we accept Delia's edits? Adding in the last paragraph that, not the last paragraph, but in the paragraph on shooting the as-built, I'm gonna find it, that it be shown as just the furthest, the closest to the resource area.
What we talked about within the 50 foot.
That would be 51. That would be, it would turn into 51 from 52.
Right.
But
don't-
they're in, Judy. They're already in. So if there's 3 at 48 and the run lines to 53, then those exist. That line will be set. So if anybody comes back 2 years, 3, 5, 10, 20 years from now, it's like, nope, you're at 37. Nope, the closest one was 48.
Hey, Greg, I thought
Yeah,
I
go
heard that there were, I thought I heard there were no sprinklers within the 50.
I
Yeah.
want to say that that is a true statement, but I haven't measured each one, and there are some along if you look at our lawn, you can kind of see a line in the grass. It's not really where the meadow begins, it's still lawn, but that's where the sprinklers stop, right? And it's out there. I don't think it's in the 50, but I can't be sure. And that's why we'd be happy to shoot the line and just say where they all are. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I do know in the area where we're putting the fence, there's no sprinklers over there now, and there won't be when we're done. So I do know, like in that corner, yeah, there's nothing there. But I don't know if, as you go across the whole property, you know, where exactly they stop in relation to the 50-foot zone, because I haven't measured all of them.
Okay, I was just trying to clarify that comment. That's all. Thank you.
That's a good comment, Ed. No, that's the point here. We don't know.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so we can map that out, like Greg said, do a line. You'll see where they go. You'll see how far they are, and then it'll be forever memorialized, and won't be able to expand past there.
Question on this order condition with regards to shooting the line. Is that just in the back part of the property, or does that include, because I noticed the 50-foot line goes around the corner of the house.
Yeah, it goes around the corner. It would include that. So I mean, if I say we'll shoot the 50-foot, it would be anything. It'd be along the side. I do know if you look in that, there's some finished area. We kind of see where the equipment's going to go. There is a head or two in there. I don't know how far over they go if they go past the 50. So that's why we would map those out as well.
Okay, thank you.
How would we cobble together? Can somebody grab, does anybody have a handle on it to grab and make a motion here? It would basically be to eliminate 20. We're not requiring an as-built at the time the pond is, the pool is poured. That'll come later. We're going to ask that a scientist terminology be changed to professional landscaper, which is 21 turned into 20 because we eliminated 20. I guess 42.
And what about 21? Is it possible to remove that one, since that back meadow really has nothing to do with this project?
So the
new 21 on the screen right now. Yep.
well, how does the commission feel on that? We
Well, we look-
usually ask that it's a one,
Yeah, we look at the whole site. I mean, I understand that this could have been done as of right, but it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
As of you chose to have the pool within the 50. So at that point, it triggers a full site review for us.
Sure.
correct.
And this is very standard
Okay.
that we would have a once a year mow for a resource area like that.
Right.
So I would be very reluctant to take that out.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with Lynn.
I would agree with that as well.
That would be a precedent would be hard to press to want to do. 42 gets stricken.
Well, you've got 27, Greg.
Yeah, I'm trying to do this on the fly here. Oh, yes, the typo part of, thank you, Lynn, very much.
the
Such as
filter
filter mitts, that's going to be edited. 42 gets eliminated, and upon completion of the project, going to the new 51, formerly 52, is the one where we would add in that the irrigation system shooting the closest points, setting somebody give me help with the verbiage on that. Setting the nearest line to
To the outermost heads or towards the resource area.
The closest.
it seems that you have to acknowledge that there is an irrigation system in the paragraph, and then say that the nearest line to the resource area will be put on the as-built plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be, can anybody reiterate that, or you just want to say what Greg said?
I have it written down.
Okay, Judy, can you can you take a shot at it?
I'll take a shot. Do I need to give the DEP file number on this?
It would.
Oh, just the address.
Just the address is fine, Judy. We can,
Okay. This is Judy. I make a motion that we revise the order of conditions for 336 Lexington Road by removing the special conditions on the original order of conditions, number 20 and number 42, and that we alter the original special condition in the order, which was number 21, to allow the use of a professional landscaper in lieu of a wetland scientist. That the original order of condition, special condition number 27 is edited to remove filter mitt. And that the original order of condition is 50.
42. 42 should be,
Yeah, I removed 42 already.
oh, you did. Thank
Yeah.
you. I'm sorry.
And original order condition 51 is altered such that the as-built plans, which include all structures, including existing irrigation structures closest to the resource area, but not the entire irrigation system within the 100-foot.
Do I have a second on that?
Oh, this is Lynn. I'll second.
Any further discussion? I'll poll. Here we go. Judy,
Aye.
Lynn,
Aye, but can we pause a second? Did we make sure we asked the public if they had any?
oh my goodness, thank you very much. Let's go out to the public. That's a very good point. I'm sorry. Guess it's getting late here. Anyone out there in the public have a thought? Please enter it now. I'll give you a few seconds to chime in because you may be away from your machine and running to it. Nancy, if I could ask you to put in your last name, that would be appreciated by the chair.
Nancy Nelson.
Thank you, Nancy.
With
All right,
his
seeing no
sparkle.
comments, I think we can go forward. We have a motion by Judy. Do we have a second?
Second,
Thank you. Nick seconds. All those in favor of the amendment, Nick,
aye.
Lynn,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
and I am aye as well. It is unanimous. Moving to our last and final item of the evening, as I don't want anyone to, I think I have to recuse myself and am leaving the meeting as a result of that, because I know the petitioner and I've talked about real estate issues with him and briefly vary this item, and I don't want anyone to ever assume that and to prejudice his project because of that. So I am going to say good night to all, and to all a good night. I feel like Santa Claus. Lynn, will you take over, please, for me? And I say good night.
Bye, Greg.
Thank you.
Bye.
All set?
Yes.
All right, great. So this is 1651, 1657 Main Street, and it is a PRD recommendation to the ZBA. We've got the applicant, Dan Gainsborough. I know you're out there. I saw your name posted. So proposing a second, I think all of us are familiar with the Riverwalk in West Concord. This sounds like this is a second Riverwalk, so to speak, same style development just west of the current Riverwalk site. We have a letter that Delia had prepared for us that I'm sure everyone saw. It's dated April 20th. Feels like years ago. So Dan, why don't you talk us through the project just briefly, orient us, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, Lynn, thank you. You just did an awesome job actually queuing it up. And you stole some of my thunder, but I'll do my best to try to keep it interesting. If you look at the plan, you'll see that to the east or to the bottom of the plan is the existing Riverwalk. And to the west would be, although it's off the plan, would be Westfield Meadows. Main Street is to the right and the river is to the left. What's also interesting to note on this plan is you'll see that dotted blue line towards the left-hand side of the plan. That's the indication of the limits of the resource area. We are looking to create a very similar community to Riverwalk. At this point, we're calling it Waterside Commons. They'll be similar to Riverwalk. In this case, there'll be a total of 14 homes. The parcel consists of 3 individual parcels that total about just under 4.75 acres, 4 3/4 acres. By comparison, Riverwalk was 3 3/4 acres, so it's about an acre more. Similar arrangement with an upper court collection of 6 homes on that upper court, and then a lower court that has 8 detached single-family homes, and they're bifurcated by a very limited amount of pavement with the parking off of that drive. So what's been really great is our cooperation with the Riverwalk folks. We're actually sharing the existing drive. We're going to modify it a little bit. We're going to shift it over such that it straddles the property line. And I think that's good for a whole bunch of reasons. One, perhaps, is just in terms of the entering and exiting onto Main Street. It's a safer condition, but equally important, it's going to take some of the pressure off of those 3 existing homes at Riverwalk, so that when people are coming and going, we'll now be able to create a screen buffer between them. And then it also introduces a much more, and this is probably maybe less interesting to the commission, but it's going to create a much easier scenario for the emergency vehicles to come and go. And then the other thing that probably is more interesting of interest to the commission is we're going to, right now, the path to the Riverwalk, or the public access from dusk to dawn, from dawn to dusk, is it runs right along the drive and then goes across right where Delia's pointing out on that reinforced turf. And then when it gets down to the community gardens, it goes to the, right, it goes to the east and then it jumps onto the Riverwalk. So what we're going to do is we're going to incorporate the public access into the new sidewalk that comes off of Main Street. And I am working with Elizabeth Hughes to try to introduce 4 spaces up on Main Street to do both traffic calming and also to create a place for the public to park during the day so that they can access the trail. And Delia was pointing out an important point that I missed. Thank you for doing that. We're going to extend, the plan is to extend the network of trails and the river access. And so what's going to happen is right where her cursor began, we're going to create a link that will allow, introduce a loop basically so that somebody could theoretically either walk where Delia is or go the other direction and then come back that way. And we have also begun early conversations. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but early conversations with the Westvale Meadows about possibly extending the trail network onto their property as well. So we'd have a nice long walk along the river if we could eventually do that. So this similar small, in fact, a lot of the footprints are we're using the same footprints from Riverwalk, so small footprint cottages, energy efficient, net zero possible. We're going to continue to use low impact development techniques to manage the stormwater. So we're prioritizing plants and people over cars and convenience. I guess I like to torture I should never say that, our residents as much as possible. And then all work will be outside the resource area. So no work in the wetlands. And then we've discussed, and Delia, I don't think Danny shared this with you yet, but Delia and her staff made a good observation about that turf, that sort of, you see the circle, we had intended that to be sort of a turf lawn. And what we're going to suggest is that we'll only use natives. There'll be no turf lawn within the wetland, within the resource area. We'll limit that to the area outside of it. And Jared Joyce, who has done all from Good Roots, who's done all of the landscape management of Riverwalk, is doing our design. And so he's really on top of appropriate plants and things. Yeah, so let me see if I forgot anything. Kind of buzz through that. We are all similar to Riverwalk. We expect to transfer the conservation restriction to the NRC. I think that's correct, Delia, right? Was the language that I did. I talked about discussions and sort of a more overarching strategic plan about how to connect all the different trails back there. We're going to try to keep as many of the existing trees as we can. I mean, there's clearly going to be some trees that have to come down. You can see it's a pretty compact, close-knit neighborhood, and there's a lot of utilities and stuff that will be running through there. But at least on the edges, the low-impact drainage are in particular on both sides, both edges of the property. So if you've been over to Riverwalk, especially on the east side, you have a pretty good sense of what that's going to look like. It looks like a very well planted. And when one of my favorite times to go over beyond the project is when it rains, because you actually see the water flowing through the swales. I guess we're just looking forward to a favorable decision and working with you guys throughout the process. Any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Yeah, so does any commissioners have questions for Dan?
I just have a quick question. It's just curious. Will the trail network be able to connect over to Cousins Park, the trails along the river there?
So I can't speak for, Delia may have a more complete picture, but I know that the folks that are on Prairie Street have expressed a willingness, and that's a big chunk of that stretch.
Yeah.
Expressed openness to let it cross their lands, which would then, I think there's one correct me if I'm wrong, Delia, I think there's one parcel in between that we have to reach out to those folks and see if they would be willing to do it.
Right, so there are two private parcels between Cousins and Riverside, and
Oh,
one
okay.
of them is quite a large parcel, the former David parcel.
Right.
Um,
And I think those folks, I think that they, at least in the past, they had expressed an openness to it. I don't know, I haven't had recent conversations with them.
Right, and that the house is set very far away from where a possible trail would be. The second parcel is, I haven't spoken to them.
Okay. Yeah, I was
It
just
would be,
curious. That would be
that's the,
wonderful.
right, that's the overall, I mean, when the Westfield Meadows CR was placed on that development in, I think the 80s, that CR was written to allow a trail to go from the 4 public parking spaces along the Assabet to the Westfield Meadow eastern property line with
Yeah.
the intention of future trail connections. And so it's great to see that those are sort of coming to pass
Yeah.
at this time.
Yeah, because that would be wonderful if that would be possible.
I agree.
Any other commissioner questions? Any questions from anyone in the public? No?
Nancy Nelson, I have no comments, but I'm very interested in following this project primarily because of that landscape and openness to the river implications. And I also sit on the historical commission, so just watching with curiosity tonight.
Can I don't know if this is appropriate, but can I ask Nancy a question?
Sure.
So Nancy, somebody told me, a couple of people have told me that the oldest oak tree in Concord is on the back edge of that property right near the river. And
I have heard that, but I have no knowledge about who said it. And do you know which one it might be?
It's the
I'd
one
love to go out there and look, actually.
Yeah, so if you're walking towards the river, it's on the left. It's the last big multi-limb oak that you'll see. It looks like it could have had it looked like it could have been featured in Harry Potter. I mean, it's a really,
Oh, wow.
it's really
A
remarkable.
real wolf tree.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll call you offline and see if we can figure that out.
That'd be great.
I know somebody who might know.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Seeing none, I don't have any questions. I think that covered everything that was on our checklist. Delia, is there anything that we've not touched on?
I think the only thing just to mention is you talked about the trail, but also bounding the limits of the conservation restriction.
Right.
Oh, right. Yes, which I believe, Dan, you've agreed to.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll work with Delia on what
Right.
the signage and where she wants to put that.
Yeah. Okay. So I think someone could make a motion if there's anyone on the commission who's ready to do that.
I move that we recommend approval of, let me get the right project here, that we recommend approval of the 1651 to 1657 Main Street PRD recommendation to the ZBA, conditioned with the following: agreement from the developer to establish a river trail in coordination with the Natural Resources Director along the southern property boundary to connect to the east and the west property boundaries. Number 2, to place a conservation restriction on the 2.99 acre common space for conservation purposes to be held by the Natural Resources Commission. And number 3, to bound the limits of the conservation restriction in a manner acceptable to the Natural Resources Director.
Do I have a second?
Second.
That was Ed.
Ed.
Okay, I'll poll you all in favor. Nick?
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Great, thanks, Dan.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't, Delia, do we have any other business? Or does that wrap it up for us?
That wraps it up.
Great, so entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Nick,
Second.
thank you. Second?
Ed, second.
Thank you, Ed. All in favor? Nick?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Good night, everyone.
And
Good night.